Welcome to AI Security Ops, the podcast where we cut through the hype and explore the real-world intersection of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. Each week, we examine how AI is reshaping both sides of the security landscape, the threats we're facing, and the defenses that we're building. I'm Bronwyn Aker, and today I'm joined by Ethan Robish and Derek Banks. In this episode, we are going to look at local open weight models and open source agent harnesses like Hermes and OpenCode. And we ask what it really means to own your own AI stack. We'll dig into data sovereignty, token sovereignty, and a quieter risk. What happens when the provider reading your prompts decides your line of work is no longer covered by its terms of service? Yeah, that's a biggie. This show is brought to you by Black Hills Information Security and Anti-Siphon Training. BHIS helps organizations like you identify and close real-world security gaps through penetration testing, adversary emulation, purple team engagements, and managed detection and response. Anti-Siphon delivers hands-on, practitioner-led training built around real attacks and real tools so you can apply what you learn immediately. Learn more at blackhillsinfosec.com and anti-siphontraining.com. All right, Derek, you've been doing lots of experimentation with this stuff. I'm going to hand this off to you with a question. What is all this about? Data sovereignty, token sovereignty? Seems like there's a lot of sovereigns in this room.
Sovereigns. It reminds me of my pastime of reading. Sounds like some magic spell or something. Token sovereignty sounds like, how to conserve your mana or something, right? Anyway, sorry, I'm a nerd. So, data sovereignty, the definition would be your data, right? Your prompts, context code, client data, findings, and a report, like anything that you might input into an AI model is data, and the sovereignty would refer to where that data is, who has access to it, who owns it. And so, I think that, I've been doing AI and security work now for a couple of years at the intersection of this, and, it's kind of less than it used to be, but, the general theme from security practitioners and hackers is, you kids get off my lawn when it comes to sending data to, third-party providers such as OpenAI and Anthropic. Maybe it's a little less now, but I do know that there are agreements in place, with, the privacy policy that's stated by specifically those two companies, says that they won't use your data to train models, but that doesn't mean that they're not inspecting your data and looking at it and storing it at all, right? So it's kind of something that happened to me here over the last couple of days, kind of made me want to do this episode. And then token sovereignty would be the same kind of idea as we move into the agentic era. I mean, I guess we're already here. Everything is basically in the AI world revolving around tokens and how much tokens cost. You might have heard the term token maxing, like with the subscription, like with Claude or with Codex. Basically means using all your allocated tokens in the window of time to get the most out of it, right? And so we're in an era of GPU, therefore token shortage. And so I think that people are starting to realize that this stuff gets expensive the more tokens that we use, especially if you're paying API rates. And I think that it won't be long before folks start to realize, or that inference providers start to jack up the rates a little bit, because they've been subsidized for some time now. However, Anthropic just posted its first profitable quarter. And so, at least that's what I heard. So I think that, can you, what compute do you have access to? Like, and if you have these business processes that are relying on, a certain cost of token, what happens if that gets jacked up, right? So token shortages, rate limits, usage windows, token cost inflation. I mean, your capacities, you're either your API and, your provider, or your hardware, which is a whole nother ball of wax, right? And so, and then the third one is something that just kind of happened to me, right? Where I guess, Ethan mentioned in chat earlier that Anthropic mentioned that they're going to start tightening like cybersecurity use cases in terms of services. And just, the last couple of days, I've had difficulty doing the exact same thing that I've been doing, coding wise on a project that is cybersecurity related. It's offensive tooling. And I was hitting a lot of errors that I was now violating terms of use on Opus 4.8. And yes, I know there's the cybersecurity verification program. We're in it. I mean,
we're in it, and we're still getting the alerts.
Yes,
and you're not the only one.
I mean, look, I'm not being super critical because surprisingly, Anthropic has responded to us this morning, which like I was actually kind of surprised. They're like, well, if it happens again, just like here's what you do. And I was like, I didn't know that. And so, but I mean, it's not just cybersecurity. I mean, I found was it last summer or last spring actually? I think it was Anthropic also did that like in the medical world. Like you can give out medical advice to some degree. Like you have to be licensed. And so anyway, I'm just saying that they're reading your prompts, and so they can decide, you know what, we're going to open up our own hedge fund, and we're not going to let you use this for financial transactions or financial trading anymore. I'm being arbitrary, right? But I mean, the risk is there. That's what we do in information security. We point out risk, and it's your ability, your responsibility to interpret that risk as it applies to you, and so. And then, go ahead, Ethan.
Oh, that it just seems like the common theme between these that ties it all together is risk. Like you just said it, like data sovereignty, token sovereignty, terms of exposure are all different types of business risk. With the service you're using and relying on, with the data that your customers like expect have maybe a legal obligation to protect, and then just I do have a question about the kind of guardrails that you're talking about, like that you hit with Anthropic.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that do you think is baked into the training of the model, and how much is it like protections they put around their API? So for instance, if you try to do the same thing using Anthropic's API versus using the Anthropic models in Bedrock, like, do you think you would hit fewer restrictions in Bedrock?
That has been my experience. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes from the error message that you get. I think that in this case, the same thing works with Sonnet, or like with what I was doing. So I've actually hit the two things that happened to me yesterday. I was trying to do a merge request on offensive tooling and GitLab through Claude, like, hey, go ahead and do, the request, right? And that's what triggered it. Okay, so there must have been something in the code it didn't like, I guess, right? And then I tried to go back, hit escape twice and go back and redo it, and it still triggered the same thing. And then another thing, I was having it try and clean up a disk and download nuclei results, which, I mean, come on, that's pretty benign. And I don't know, maybe data exfiltration, but I was downloading it. Like, I don't know. These were things that I had been doing a lot, and they stopped working with Opus 4.8. So I think that if I had to give percentages, I'd say 60% in the harness and the API, and 40% in the model.
And when you say harness, you're talking primarily like the backend harness, like whatever they're running on their server side.
Like, I think in terms of like the protections all around, I think Claude Code, like built in the system prompt, are certain protections. And it was actually, late last fall where they actually put in, authorized pen testing and CTFs into Claude system prompt as an authorized behavior, right?
Huh.
And then I think inside of that, after that, there are probably protections, or there should be protections on the API, right? Looking at your prompts and the input. And as a side note, I bet their telemetry is amazing. Like what's coming in from everywhere. Talk about a big data problem. Same with OpenAPI or OpenAI.
man.
But then there are also guardrails in the model. So I think there is like at least three like defense in depth points, I guess.
Well, it's interesting that they would go to the trouble of putting that on the client side, the harness side, because it's kind of the same thing you get with web application security. Like you can put all the logic and permission checks you want in the client side JavaScript. None of it matters if you're attacking it.
So
you have to enforce it on the server side to make it actually effective.
Your point, like, or to your question, do you think that, where is it? And what Bronwyn said earlier, like, I've been doing a lot of agentic work. I've been using Bedrock, and I found it like Bedrock is like less restrictive in terms of like, it's just like raw API calls to a model, and Amazon doesn't seem to be putting much in the way.
Well, if they did, malicious actors wouldn't be launching as many attacks from AWS systems.
I gotta say that those attackers need to have some deep pockets, because that crap ain't cheap, right, John?
No, it ain't.
So how do we make it cheaper, Derek? I think you have the answer sitting on your desk, don't you?
Yeah, it's actually under my desk. But so two things. One, like, again, I'm not knocking the frontier providers. This is all uncharted territory. And I think you had mentioned also, again, in chat earlier, that you thought maybe this was tightening of guardrails to try and for them to figure out how to release Mythos level capabilities out into the world. And I think they've got to do something. And now, like if there's a executive order where the government is wanting to review models for 30 days before they're released to the public, which I mean,
that's crazy. I hadn't heard that.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
no,
it's a new executive order.
Which I don't.
Originally wanted 90
that?
days, and they got talked down to 30 days. But
and the frontier providers were like, we don't want to do any of that. So no one's happy with 30 days, right?
Yeah.
What good is it? I mean, it's like that meme of the guy, doing this to, not even touching people when they're just supposed to be patting them down. Like,
what do you mean that there's probably nobody in the government that's qualified to actually do like an effective like evaluation of the capabilities?
I mean, I wouldn't say that, but like,
I bet they don't work in the executive branch.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they do. I don't know. There probably are, but so to me, like, I like your analogy. Mine's also, was it the old, like the Dutch boy putting the finger in the dike? That's what I think of. I was like, there is no way at this point. The cat is so far out of the bag that it seems like most everything that we're gonna do is just gonna stifle U.S. innovation. Like, we're in the race, but
yeah, one of the, speaking of the race, like most of the open models that get released are coming from China, and one of our points here, spoiler, is like, hey, to have true data sovereignty, you run a local model. You can only do that with open weight models, and one of the key differentiators of like open weight versus frontier is like the frontier models are better. They're more like bigger for sure, like unless you have access to the data center yourself. But but the counter argument is like the open weight models are just as good as the frontier models were like several months ago.
It's true. Well, so there's a little nuance to it, right? Because like what I can run here locally on my server right now, I have Qwen 3.6 27 billion parameter model running with a 200K context window, because that's the context window size, I think, not 256. Either way, there's a portion of it that's the system prompt for the harness, and it takes up X amount, and then you get, I think it's something like I was getting like a 80K or 100K like for the agent. And maybe that's not the math, maybe, but so I've got a smaller like window, and also the model is smaller. but also there's open weight models that you can run in the cloud. And so, and since we just sold this, I guess it's like an offering. We now offer agentic AI pen tests at Black Hills. Apparently I do. And I'm really excited about the platform and so basically it's a custom built harness that runs using AWS Bedrock, and I use GLM 5.1 for the heavy lifting. And the reason why is because it was specifically designed, again, a Chinese model for long range agentic tasks. And in testing, when I was using, it was Opus 4.6 at the time when I was doing development of it. And Opus 4.6 is really expensive. And I racked up a pretty big AWS bill, but it was worth it because the platform, like early in testing, actually discovered a critical for a customer that our humans had missed, right? And that's happened now like a couple of times. But there is also the converse that the AI is sometimes wrong and the human has to correct it. So, but anyway, when I started,
well, good hits and bad misses. We deal with false positives all the time.
yeah, exactly. And so, but anyway, GLM 5.1, let's just say that it's 85% as capable as Opus 4.6, and then that I was getting like basically the same results in testing, like the same findings consistently between the models. And it was, and GLM 5.1 is like 90% cheaper. Like we went from it being like $1,000 a run to like $100 a run. And I also then use Opus to come through and now like re-rate and revalidate and then do reporting because it's a larger context window. So I'm using an ensemble of different models. And there's so many out there. Like now I'm in a position where we could start testing and we could try like a new Chemi model just came out. But to your point, yes, the Chinese definitely have the open weight model. Like they're doing better. And I want to believe in Gemma 4 that came out recently, but I'm having issues with it. And the GPT stuff that came out, I never really got to do anything useful with. But I will say that the Quinn, I've been using Hermes with the Spark, and I had it do
explain the DJI Spark quick.
Oh, yeah. That's
DGX,
a good,
whatever.
the DGX Spark.
DGX, yeah.
So NVIDIA basically has a small form factor computer that has a GPU in it, or an AI chip. I mean, you're not playing games on the thing. It's a Blackwell chip, I think, that has 128 gig of RAM, a 2 terabyte disk. I forgot what CPU's in it. It's basically built to be like a little mini desktop, like supercomputer, right? And 128 gig RAM is pretty decent for running, these edge, like, open weight models. And so I put a VLLM instead of Ollama on it because it's faster. And I'm getting pretty decent results. I just started kind of down the road. Our idea is as inference costs start to rise, can we effectively do like, everyday pen tester tasks from the DGX Spark? And the answer might be yes. But then, that GLM model, for comparison, that GLM 5.1 model, I believe is a 400 and some billion parameter model. To run it, I'm writing up stuff now because now the question's coming from management at Black Hills is, well, what if we wanted to run that whole AI platform not in Bedrock, but here locally, what would we need? And the answer is 16 H200s. And
ouch.
And two like clustered systems, 8 in each system. And because we need about 1.5 terabytes of GPU.
You realize D-Rock is going to kill you because now he's got to upgrade your conditioning again.
D-Rock's asked me to size it. So, hey, D-Rock. It isn't me asking for it. I'm on the fence of which should we do it, and that's with me like getting to be part of like making it. But there's a couple of things you have to keep in mind. It's not just the model itself, right? It's also the context window or the KV cache, right? If you talk about like the attention mechanism, that has to be in GPU too. So as you're going through this, autoregressive loop in the LLM predicting the next token, you want to cache what you've computed already in the attention mechanism. So you have to do it every single time, right? And so that takes up GPU too. And so to run it at the full context window, and then also run up to 10 tests, so like 10 like engagements a week. So we have anywhere from 5 to 10 externals. The calculation ended up being 1.5 terabytes of GPU, which is like 16 H200s.
So I think you've covered several different levels here that we could tie back into our different sovereignties. So if we talk about like data sovereignty, what one level is, hey, Anthropic or OpenAI, like you're sending all your stuff to this AI company, which you have agreements with, but maybe you don't trust them, or maybe you just, don't want to have to trust them. So the next level would be, okay, take an open weight model, which you can host yourself, if you have the hardware. But if you don't have the hardware, you can host it on Bedrock, or what's the Azure one, like Foundation or something. Foundry.
And there are other providers too, right? Like NVIDIA.
Yeah,
like,
someone else's data center.
Someone else's.
But you're still hosting and sending data to a third party.
Yeah, you're shifting who you trust. You're shifting from the OpenAIs, the Anthropic, the frontier models to whoever's hosting your data center. And then the third level is you bring your own hardware, and the DGX Spark is a way to do that, to start doing real work. But I think, so data sovereignty, I mean, you're obviously shifting, but then also like the terms exposure, or the limits, the rate limits and stuff. So with the frontier models, you've got your rate limits, and there's really no way around that, especially if you're on a subscription. You got your 5-hour blocks and your week blocks. If you start hosting that yourself in like the AWS data, like Bedrock, that all goes away, right, Derek? There's no like rate limits to speak of.
No,
like you just...
so I think there are some rate limits, but
okay.
I spawn like 8 concurrent agents at a time, 16 concurrent agents, and I haven't really hit it. I think there are some rate limits like per model, but so far, no, I have not had an issue. And which, by the way, Amazon Bedrock does have a pretty clear and concise privacy policy where they basically say we're not saving any of that data for anything.
Yeah.
They're just, I mean, it's basically an API call to them, right?
Yeah. So I imagine they might have some restrictions on terms of use, because AWS in general just has terms of use. So if you're doing completely illegal things, you're on Silk Road or whatever, and or you're spitting up hacking campaigns. Although Brown, to your point earlier, maybe people are doing that anyway and getting away with it, but presumably it's against Amazon's terms of use. And so to get around, like if you're doing something shady, or maybe contextually okay, morally arguably okay, but companies don't want to be a part of it, then you're kind of forced to shift it even further to your own hardware.
Yeah, I mean, even with Amazon, there's nothing, with it, like it's just a company with a terms of use. It's theoretically possible for them to change their terms and be able to now take a cornerstone of like what's going to be like our future business away. Yeah. Now, are they going to do it? I doubt it. We're not doing anything illegal, right? Yeah. So, but I mean, the possibility exists, again, like with looking at risk. The risk is not non-zero, just like the risk of using a Chinese like open weight model with a coding a coding harness like OpenCode or Claude Code or Codex or whatever. You're using a Chinese open weight model. The possibility exists that it could locally like code a backdoor and do something. Now, is that going to happen? Practically speaking, no. But it's not the risk is not non-zero. I mean, but
that same risk would be present in frontier models as well. It's just which country do you trust more? Which companies and which country they reside in, I guess. Do you trust more?
But I mean, that's going down. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bronwyn.
No, well, there's also the fact that I know in the reports I've seen more and more supply chain attacks seem to be happening. I mean, supply chain has always been an issue, but now it's like, okay, if I'm using Anthropic, Well, Anthropic is a big target. They've already had source code leaked. I'm sorry, I'm babbling here, but the whole idea is that even if we're trusting the third-party frontier models, their targets, they might be attacked directly. We go with a hosting service, is the same kind of thing. So for the truly paranoid, local may be the only way to go. The problem is that the more you're doing yourself, the more maintenance and upkeep. How much work are you doing, Derek, to develop these new tools that are running locally on that Spark?
Wait, are you asking me like how much like work have I done like to get the Spark up and running?
Well, I mean, it's not just getting it up and running. It's the fine tuning, it's the torquing, it's the testing.
Yeah. So
And
the heaviest lift was because I chose to go with VLLM. If I would have went with Ollama or Llama CPP as an inference engine, because if you're going to get into open weight models, the first thing is choosing an inference engine. Probably the most popular is Ollama, and it's pretty easy to get installed. But if you're going to go down the road,
very easy.
Yeah, exactly. So most of this is pretty easy to get up and running until you start saying, start using things like VLLM, where it's more of like kind of like a production ready. I wanted to learn that because there were rumblings of being asked of, hey, what if we want to like, host all this ourselves? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a good question. What if we want to do that? So VLLM is what the kids on the street use to host like production models, right? And so I went with that. That was a little bit of a heavy lift. I had Claude helping me, honestly, figure it out. Now I have a Docker project that I can just switch between models, so it's pretty easy getting that. I actually wrote a setup guide. I could actually publish it on my GitHub or something. I mean, let's polish it up a little bit. And so now the Spark, I got VLLM up and running, a couple of models on there. And then I have a Hermes agent and a Kali VM, just because I wanted to put in a VM instead of, because I wanted to be able to use the Spark when I wasn't at home, right? Because that's, cloud versus local. And so I put a Tailscale network on the Spark, and then on the Kali VM, because I didn't want to put Tailscale on my production computer. I didn't know if systems would be happy with me if I did that. So I just did it in a VM, and it works pretty well. Like I was up at the my daughter's swim practice at the pool yesterday, 30 miles from my house, and I could access the Spark like I was sitting next to it. So everything but I'd say everything was pretty easy, standard open source install stuff, except for getting VLLM up and running. But now that it's working, I only have a couple complaints. One complaint I have about the Spark is it's not easy to encrypt the hard drive. I haven't gone down that road yet. Brian Fearman did. It was an exercise in frustration, apparently. I think there's actually a cheaper one from Asus. I can't remember the model name. That it's about $3,500, because like Ethan was saying, there's kind of different levels to this, right? The first level is cheaper inference, bedrock, open weight models. It's kind of it's not free, but it's pretty cheap depending on you're doing usage paying. It's $3,500 to $5,000 for local inference of 128 gig of RAM. And then, if you're gonna host the big models, well, you're looking at $250,000.
Crazy.
Yeah,
something in that neighborhood. Maybe more.
I think this entire conversation seems very similar to we could be hosting a self-hosted podcast right now. Like it's the same argument of why you would want to get away from big companies, software as a service, and host it yourself.
So are we all using OBS and VPNs? I don't even know how that works.
Yeah,
but Well, I mean, so I think that the whole idea here is that every company and every individual has different needs and different risk postures, different
Absolutely.
and so it depends on what you want to do. If you're listening to this podcast and you're just getting into AI and cybersecurity, what I would do would be to install like Hermes agent on a VPS or a VM and go to NVIDIA and try their free inference to get started. Because then, and setting up Hermes is pretty easy. They have like if you, similar to OpenClaw in the sense that they have a like kind of like a walkthrough, like configure it this way. So you really just need to go to NVIDIA, create an account, and get an API key. You could use Anthropic API keys or OpenAI API keys. They have a lot of different like model providers or options, and then just start using it. I actually had the thought earlier that maybe I should take a step back away from Claude Code because that's what I've been using for so long, and just kind of test the waters with some other stuff. I haven't even really used Codex that much yet, and so maybe it's time to kind of to branch out a little bit. So, but I guess what I'm getting at is like pick a harness and go and kind of learn it and get to use it and do it as cheaply as you can.
I know one of the things that I've been seeing more and more, and I've been also seeing in my own experimentation, is that it's easier to go deep with a single set of whatever tools, whether, regardless of the model you're using or the harness you're using. Pick one, go deep with those. After you've gotten a deeper understanding, then go and do like what you're going to do. Branch out, see what the other kids are doing, and expand from there. And what I've seen is a lot of the knowledge is transferable from one set to the other, but it's not until you get into the weeds that you get into the nuances.
Yeah, and if you're sitting here thinking, man, I don't even know like what to even start to do like as a project. I mean, that's okay. It's sometimes hard to like get started. What I would do is pick something that you do at work. Like if you're a blue teamer and you're looking at log files, you take a set of log files and have your harness, Hermes, OpenCode, Claude Code, Codex. Gemini has one. Gemini named theirs the same that they name their models. It's called Gemini. Why do you do that, Google?
Well, just also like Google, they have already canceled or like deprecated that.
Oh,
and now they've rolled it into AGY and their anti-gravity CLI.
Good Lord.
Google.
I can't even keep up. And I have I pay for Google Pro like $20 a month just to like be part of their ecosystem.
Oh God.
And I still can't keep up.
I'm reading through alerts and articles and updates at least 2 to 3 hours a day, over and above, and I'm a speed reader and I still can't keep up.
Yeah. But that's the challenge for anyone listening this week is pick a harness and the cheapest inference that you can if you don't have it through work, and try and run some real tasks through it. You don't have to be creative. You don't have to have it create your own personal GitHub or something, right? Like you don't have to have it
Not in
recode a
week one,
platform
anyway.
or something. Just like get started with like everyday kind of tasks. That's where I think personal like local open weight, open harness agents are going to shine. Is helping you do things like draft reports. I use Claude, and I'm like I should probably start doing this with Hermes instead. I have it help me come up with my I do a weekly status report just so I know, even if no one's reading them, like what I've done for the weeks, right? Because I have teenagers and I forget. And so just the things that you do that you have to do all the time that are repetitive, and see if it'll help you out.
So we talked about like hosting your own models, right? And you don't have to go out and buy a DGX Spark. You don't have to go buy the most fancy MacBook Pro or whatever. So there's, I don't know if we have show notes or not, but there's a GitHub project, Alexis Jones. It's called LLM Fit.
LLM Fit.
Yeah. And if you download that, run it, it will give you a list of open weight models that will work and like how well it predicts they'll work on your hardware.
Yeah.
And there's actually a website too, and I don't remember.
That's
what
one
that
of the
was.
features of Misty that I like a lot.
Okay.
I mean, Misty is primarily a GUI, but you do have the ability to download and run multiple models locally or via API key, and you can do side-by-side chat. So you're sharing the same prompt, you're sharing the same data stack, you're sharing all of this stuff across. I think 3 is the maximum number of chats you can run simultaneously. But it's nice because when you're going to connect to Ollama or Hugging Face, it shows you right away whether or not a specific model will perform well or poorly. And that is another nice feature. And if you're focusing on learning the differences between the models as opposed to the harness, Misty, MSTY, is a nice tool.
Well, I think that's probably a good place to leave it. We're 36 minutes in, and so I think, I'm sure that we'll have more to say over the next coming weeks to months about open weight models and open source harnesses, and this seems like it's a roller coaster ride that's going into a dark tunnel, but maybe there's light at the end of that tunnel.
So we kind of focused on different risk and data sovereignty and whatever, the 3 different pillars here. One type of risk that cuts across all 3 of them that we didn't cover, and maybe we can do in a future episode, is local, prompt injection. Like what risk does your harness pose? Prompt injection, or even just hallucination, and your model goes rogue and starts deleting stuff on your system. It doesn't matter where you're hosting or what model you're using. The risk is the same.
I actually have slides on that in my class, so we can just take from that and do it. Hey, now we know what next week's episode will be.
Very cool.
All right.
All right, just stay tuned.
All right. And with that, keep on prompting.